Today we are located in North Manchester, Indiana. I'm standing next to Bob Kraus, Midwest Poultry Services. So many people are asking the question about the proper treatment of animals, and in this case we're talking about chickens. Did you know that in 1900 about 95% of all farmers in the United States had chickens on their farm? Today it might be closer to 1% of all farmers, and yet each of us as a consumer utilizes a chicken in some way, shape, or form. Maybe we don't even know it. Bob Kraus is going to give us a tour around this location here. We've got about 2.3 million birds at this facility, and I think you'll be interested to see how these birds are treated and the life living in a condominium, a luxury hotel. Is that true? We'll find out. Go back to the 60s, because in the 60s is when we began bringing chickens inside to protect them from the elements, to protect them from predators, and that's why we see the caged facilities that we have here today.
Right. In the 60s, it was generally the birds were still raised either on the floor, or still quite a few birds were raised outside. And in order to protect the chickens and to make it easier on the farmers, they started moving the birds indoors and found that they had much lower mortality, higher productivity. It was much easier to keep the birds healthy in an indoor environment. You didn't have predators. You didn't have the various diseases that birds can pick up by being in contact with other wild animals.
In fact, we have even had the USDA recently announce that if in fact avian influenza would ever come to the United States, which I personally don't believe that it will, because we have these facilities that protect birds, but if it did, we would need to bring the outside birds inside because it is our best means of protecting them.
It is, absolutely. And in Europe, they've even looked at that and are allowing for organic eggs to be kept indoors just to keep them from associating with any outdoor animals.
Many people, I believe, have the perception that free range chickens that can run outside under the trees and dust bathe are in a more ideal environment. You have some experience that would indicate that that may not be the case.
Well, I've been in the industry since '82, and when I came into the industry, all the birds were in cages. My father-in-law that I worked for and our production manager, who have been in the producing eggs since the mid-50s, have experience with all the different types of diseases and problems that birds can pick up outdoors, like coccidiosis and tapeworms, pinworms, E. coli problems, all of those things. It's interesting because my experience with those is almost none, because it simply hasn't been an issue since we've had birds inside. Now that we have customers asking for more cage-free or free-range birds, it's fortunate that we have people who go clear back to before we had cages and have experience with keeping your birds healthy in a much more challenging environment. It's not that you can't keep those birds healthy, but it's just much more difficult in order to do that, and much more expensive, and it's still harder on the birds than keeping them away from all those problems to begin with.
It's not easy for us walking through here on one given day to determine whether a bird, a hen in a cage, like we've already seen, or a hen in a cage-free environment but still inside is better. You are here every day. Can you make an assessment on which is better?
It's really difficult for me to say one is better than the other. Both systems can work, and we have customers for both, but it's more efficient and less expensive to take care of a hen in a cage than it is in a cage-free environment. So while both are possible and both have benefits, the benefit to the customer is a safety factor in those caged birds that's just difficult to ensure when the birds are running loose.
You know, we can talk about what's beneficial to you as the egg farmer, but ultimately if you spend more money in facilities, and it does cost 3 times as much to build a cage-free environment as opposed to a caged environment for a hen, that ultimately is going to be paid at some point in time by the end user, the consumer.
Absolutely. Our job is to produce the products that our consumers are looking for as efficiently as possible.
And the bottom line, ultimately, Bob, the way I understand it, is that you're in the business of producing eggs. You will produce the egg in any manner that the consumer desires. The question that what remains, what will you pay for my type of production?
That's right. And we prefer to leave it up to the customer. We'll produce eggs in a number of different fashions as long as it provides proper animal welfare. Then it's up to the consumer to decide if they want a regular standard grade A egg, or if they want a specialty egg that's cage-free, free-range, organic, fertile organic, any sort of more expensive boutique-type egg.
Those are the options and the choices that we want to make sure that you, the consumer, continue to have, and that is exactly what we have found here with Bob Kraus, Midwest Poultry Services in Indiana. I'm Trent Luce. Thanks for joining us.